Good afternoon. Welcome to Investigator News, and I'm Ellie, and this is a week-long special in part two. Um, to go over last night a little bit. I know it was long and it was hard and a little hard to take, but I got the worst part of it over, and that's the socialism that's been plaguing our politics for over 100 years. And I wanted to show you that it was started early on. Not only that, I wanted to show you that the one world order went all the way back. It wasn't just with Bush saying, one world order, and everybody thought, uh-oh. No, it went way further back. So that was what last night was about. And it got into a little bit of Ukraine. So today I'll get back into Ukraine a little bit and give you more details and read from a lot of documents to show you what was going on. Now, I know Burisma and Hunter Biden and Joe Biden was going on at that time. And that's what got me looking at a lot of what was going on in Ukraine. Now understand, folks, this war that's been happening over there has been going on since 2008, but it was among separatists. And come to find out, the separatists were trained by Soros later on in the years. But to start off with, they were the Azov Battalion. But before I get too far into it, I want to go over a little bit of news that's going on. The Kremlin denies rumors that Putin is dead. Boy, it's all over the place in some of the world news. They say he has got a lookalike, or a few of them, that stepped in, and that he mentioned when he first came out and said he was ill, that he might disappear for a few months before he would let everybody know what was going on. But know that according to the Kremlin, they deny all the rumors and say that he is ill. He does have an illness, but he is not dead. Now, Biden, oh my goodness, folks. Biden on the 9mm. Now, you got to remember, this is, they say it's the most popular handgun. In ways, yes. The bullet is what's popular. There's a lot of different guns out there that use the 9mm. And he is also attacked the pro-Second Amendment argument that firearms are needed to take on a corrupt government. Okay. So that caught me off guard. But yeah, it's the most popular bullet. And when they first started doing hearings on the issue of the rational gun law should be, the death rate was going up. And not only that, but nearly 1 week after those children were killed, not many more people were being shot, but the death rate was up. And he said, why are they dying? And they showed me x-rays, he said, and a 22 caliber bullet will lodge in the lung, and we could probably get it out. But a 9mm blows the lung right out of the body. Well, that is untrue. Breitbart News fact-checked Biden's statement that the 9mm round will blow up an organ out of the body is false. So the idea, so yeah, we fact-checked him. Yes. So the idea of a high caliber weapon is simply no rational basis. Um, it's yeah, it's used for self-protection, hunting, and but they're just going after the Second Amendment, folks. That's all it is. And if you look and um, what about Dirty Harry and the 44 Magnum? I don't know what bullet that use. It might use a 9 millimeter. I'm not real good on guns, so don't hold me to it. But it's very disheartening that with the crime rate and the gangs passing out guns to kids, that he's not going after them. But today, I think with this special I'm doing, I think it's going to start explaining why it's happening. Um, the other one is Emerson College promotes a professor who urged massacring white people. Um, uh, that's not very cool. Um, he is a professor who publicly fantasizes about massacring white people, and um, this college has a tradition of welcoming radically divisive administrators. And so this professor is promoting blacks and white can't be friends, they can't be married. This sounds racist to me. I did a little bit on racism, and see how absurd it is. How dare anybody tell a black person and a white person that they can't find one another and fall in love? That's just ludicrous right there. Um, he has 9 tips for anti-racist child rearing, and she guides parents on how to raise their children within a critical race theory dogma. The manual claims that it's not judging people by color of their skin is absurd, she says. So yeah, now even though she received an award named after Martin Luther King, her ideology opposes everything King stood for. That I can attest to. With listening to his niece, uh, far from it, and a lot of these guys are far from it. They have veered so far from what Martin Luther King uh, protested over, peaceful protest, that it's almost laughable at this point. But the more they throw race, race, race out there, the more you'll get sick of it. And as we were seeing on yesterday's show, it seemed that it was the Democrats with the white supremacy all the way up into the 90s. So they're saying, oh, we changed parties in the 60s, and it was um, we changed our views, we moved up north, and the Southerners and the Republican parties, the ones that were racist, became racist. You can fact check that, and that is false. um, what had happened is we ran them out of the South, and we had to put Republicans in power to end segregation in the South. People like um, Huckabee and Jim Guy Tucker, I believe, is one of the other ones that was here, that was governor. And earlier on, too, in most of like Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, and so we ran them up. And what did they do? They went up north, took over like Illinois and Chicago and New York and all these other places. And basically, I feel put the African Americans in, um, and basically segregated them up there into the projects, and made them with no jobs and no way to even get anywhere. They did that here. That's what really makes me mad, because Ninth Street was booming in the 60s, and they just took it away. They built the freeway so close that you couldn't hardly even get into Ninth Street. So now the Supreme Court, let's see, the Supreme Court, the leak investigation is escalated to a level where clerks are forced to come clean. The Politico published the draft of an opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito, and we know that. And the draft option calls for a new standard of abortion laws, which would effectively overturn the 1973 Roe versus Wade. Um, so the Supreme Court leak is heated up, and as clerks are asked for phone records and also any type of records on the computers. Um, they're serious on this, so it doesn't really sound like they have. Um, no one's come forward just yet because this came out today. Um, let's see, it's done by Jack Davis with the Western Journal. So that is it for the news, and I want to really get onto this. So um, we went over last night about the activists that are rioting in the streets all around the world, and these are they use the terms civil society 2.0. It eventually turned into open society, and why? Because that was the name of the foundation that Soros was uh, giving lots of money to. And these two phrases are used by the shadow government, and it was to mold the rest of the world into socialist themes. And again, being done without your consent. Did we ever approve for Hillary to make Soros and the globalists a big part of U.S. aid? Did we give them the okay to put him in the State Department to receive money for NGOs? We didn't even know about. Um, they used civil and open society groups to investigate violent regime change. Um, and it had a name, a spontaneous indigenous uprising. And that they use that, and they even use it here. That's what's scary, is they now started using that here, and I'll explain it in a few minutes. So we talked about the Arab Spring when everybody was out on the streets, and they don't use what they did was it wasn't considered a violent protest. They threw that name in there so that it would make it so it was so spontaneous that not one group could be blamed for it, nor could they find enough people that planned this. So basically, they were putting everybody through the jail system, letting them out because it was just basically disruptive. And it wasn't really, and they even raped that one girl. And because uh, it was so spontaneous, they really didn't do nothing about it. Now, that's too scary um, to have these uprisings. And so we're primarily focusing on the timeline. Now, we knew the coup had brought forward some new possibilities for the Obama administration. Primarily, uh, they were focused on Biden's getting richer and the DNC and the White House. And what I mean by that is, um, remember I mentioned Gershon. Now he was a big part of uh, uh, the Washington crowd, and he was in charge of. Oh goodness, I should wrote down. Um, anyway, but what he did was he was a part of the Democrat Socialist Party in DC. And so you get the DNC crowd, but then you have the Socialist Democrat crowd. And what they're able to do with this is funnel a little bit of money through there to where they don't have to directly claim it, like if it went through the DNC and they got more than what they should have and get charged. So this is a whole new way that they collect campaign funds. And there is also facts of even an audio tape that's incriminating a lot of them. It has disappeared, and it seems there's no doubt in my mind there was something that's missing with this. And this is where I thought, okay, because I had my dots kind of connecting together. And this is when I thought, okay, there's something going on in Ukraine. We got Burisma going on. So I figured this audio tape had to have been something that the Hunter Biden and the two gentlemen that were working with him at Burisma and how they got this money. So I was thinking there's something there in Ukraine that everybody wants. And so I thought it was this audio tape. Come to find out, nope, it wasn't. And but it was something that was bugging me. And so I mentioned George a lot yesterday, and how he's funding a lot of the NGOs in Ukraine because uh, I um, I didn't realize that he was a big part of Ukraine until about a week ago when I got the newest set of info and was reading through some of the documents from Judicial Watch. And the thing about it is, um, I know how toxic it is to mention George, and I know what will be done again to my. They'll try to destroy my reputation, and this program they ban me, claim false information if I mention him. Now he is not on the community standards. They just hit me up with false information though. So, but he was funding NGO, which is a non-government organization in Ukraine. Now, let me say that again, non-government organization. And a lot of these NGOs, and I explained to Karen last night, you get a foundation and you can get government money and basically not have to claim on taxes on it. And this is where a lot of these foundations go. Now, if you watch Jason Goodman with Charles Ortiz, I believe, and he shows you that these foundations are just hiding money left and right. That's kind of what an NGO is. They'll get governmental money, but then they scapegoat on their taxes on this. So that's a non-government organization. Now, alongside the Obama administration, now according to um, two former prosecutor generals in Ukraine, that the non-governmental organization, the Anti-Corruption Action Center, was being shielded by the U.S. ambassador and by the United States State Department. Well, things started to come together a little bit more clear in the interview with a former Ukrainian official who was working alongside the prosecutor general's office. And he was actually there when the people started organizing and protesting in the streets. Now, to get his boss fired, he stated. Now, the thing about this is the boss was the one that Biden threatened to get taken down. And so I went back through because I read it last night and boy, it didn't make no sense. And so I reran it through the translator. And he says, I want to make sure I understand this because um, um, uh, something that the American media will never cover is that they didn't know about what was going on. That was the question we were asking. Then we came up to the protesters, and he said he was the one who actually coordinated communication with the protesters on the prosecutor's general's behalf. And he's asking, look, guys, what happened? What is the story behind your protest? Why are you so angry? We're ready to cooperate. Let's go and we'll show you what's needed. Let's get involved together because this is pure anger in the streets and it's not involving us together as far as a peaceful protest. And here are the NGOs, your other organization. Let's cooperate together, fight corruption. And then they said they invited them to the prosecution office. And and they still, after that, even got worse protesting. And remember, I told you they ended up using Facebook, Twitter, and they got them all established over there. And I'll get into a little bit with um, a guy named Ross on how he was setting this up, and between him and Hillary at the State Department. Yep, Hillary's corrupt again. So they said basically nobody knew at the time what they were doing and what their agenda was. They were keeping it very quiet. And so he's found to be very credible. So they didn't know what they were doing, what the protesters were doing, what their agenda was. And the prosecutor general's office had no clue what the agenda was. And from this Soros-funded NGO, all they knew that there was a massive coordination between the people in the streets, the social media, people from outside the country, from the United States, and they were all protesting in the streets, despite the Ukrainian government reaching out to the organization and offering a little bit of help. And what they didn't want is them burning everything down and getting very radical to the point where they would lose parts of their streets or watch them burn flags. And they said that because this is what they've seen in the United States. And so when I heard about this, I thought, whoa, I watched a lot of those back and forth. And I was kind of looking at Ukraine saying, wow, these just look like people off the streets. But they were actually trained to train protesters to do that. And so it made it perfectly clear to me that the Molotovs and the smoke bombs and the things they were using and throwing and bricks, and it always seemed very familiar to me what we see here. And of course, then we did find out that Soros went over there. He had trained the protesters how to be aggressive, and that's what they were keeping from this prosecuting attorney's office. And so this direction, when I started turning away from that, saying, okay, they had these guys. Well, who are these guys then that are training them? And come to find out, it was like, well, Soros people was. Well, okay, that's just the protesters. But then I was looking at who are the separatists. And so this turned very dark and deep. And I started seeing Obama administration had been working in tandem with the Soros and supporting his NGO going all the way back to the months leading up to the Ukraine coup in 2014. In 2013, just before, the International Renaissance Foundation was their primary financier from 2014 through 2017, basically until Trump became president. So I looked to see, and I was very surprised at who the Ukrainian army was that Soros was working with. Because then, when you start pulling up the Obama stuff and the documents and seeing what he was signing into, then you see a group called the Azov Battalion. Now, and I'm going to give you a little bit of history on this, and this is what the people think. Initially, the Azov was a volunteer militia that formed in the city of Berdyansk, and to support the Ukrainian army and its fight against pro-Russia separatists. And this was in eastern Ukraine. Some of its fighters came from the small but active far-right group, Pravy sector, right sector, whose core members were from eastern Ukraine, but they spoke Russian. Originally, they had been advocated in unity with the Slavic peoples and Russians, Belarus, the Ukrainians, and others. And they were active in national circles, such as associations that would be described as free comradeships or organized neo-Nazi groups in Germany. And so there was Andreas Umlin, from the Stockholm Center for Eastern Europe Studies, and admitted that they were all neo-Nazis. They were trying to claim they weren't down in um, um, Ukraine, but they just couldn't keep it together and keep it quiet enough, because the news reports kept following them around, and reporters on the ground that were looking at the war started looking at these guys. They had uniforms, they had patches, and the patches even represent neo-Nazis. And so early attention was um, um, Nazi Wolfsangel symbol and its emblem. The Wolfsangel has a far right connotations. It's a pagan symbol that the SS also used, but it's not considered a fascist symbol by the population of Ukraine, even though other countries that's what they basically claim that this is. So the symbol from the Nazi era is to be understood a stylized version of the letter N and I, standing for national idea. Now, this is going on all over Europe, too. These extremists defending Mariupol, some of the fighters defended Mariupol belonged to the Azov Battalion, an ultra nationalist militia with ties to extremists in Europe and Germany and even the UK. And they said there's even hints of them in the group in the United States called Antifa. So basically, when they started looking at it and looking at film, pictures, videos of what the journalists on the ground, and this is where my sources come in. They're the ones that kind of told me about this. So they pulled their pictures and their videos and started looking at them, and they noticed that they were getting pictures of armored vehicles with the white letter Z, and it's very visible. And the Russian troops use this, and troops in Ukraine use it. But what they decided to do was use the N and the I, and they basically were saying that it's to show that these are the Nazi troops that are in these vehicles. And they're notorious. They're also known for um, destroying a lot of the Russian armored vehicles right now, uh, fighting vehicles. They've killed many. Um, and the other thing is they are very cruel and torturous. And this is one of the presidents, and I'll probably get to it later. One of the presidents that was there supported this group. And he was even talking that they behead people. So, you know, I haven't heard anything on the Russian side that from any of the reporters that Russia is actually doing nothing but destroying buildings, and unfortunately, there are people in it. But this little group, this Azov Battalion, they said is very cruel, and they are known to go in and kick out Russians out of their homes and cause them to flee into Russia. Now, Mariupol is also where the Azov Battalion uh, is a part of the National Guard there. Um, and their interior ministry has set up its headquarters. So this isn't just a group of couple little guys. This is a well-formed group, an army that is they call far right radicals. Some of the countries over there, they say far right. Theirs is kind of flipped. It's like a mirror to where the the what you would think is Democrats here are far right over there, and so that's why you see it being confused by the media where they're saying, yeah, it's all Republicans. So they say, according to the count, and this was in the fall of 2014, there was 1,000 fighters at that time of this battalion. And they said right now there's close to 10,000 of them. That's it. And so that's not just a small little group like they keep saying over here on the news. So the U.S. Embassy also strangely giving them tons of money from 2008 through 2017, basically until Trump became president. And the two sources of funding came from the Soros foundations, but also Obama administered your tax dollars uh, through USAID. So now, if we look at 2018, the Trump administration halted that money from USAID. But look who stepped in, you'll never guess, to fill the spot of the extra weight that Soros, he wanted that money. And he's not about money, he's about power. So he doubled down. So there's something the money was for. And he doubled down, and finally the U.S. Embassy resumed their funding role just as they did back before the 214 coup. So why is the embassy and the extension, the State Department, working directly with Soros? What do you and I have to gain from any of this? And we didn't even know. We didn't even know. We just assume the State Department with USA is, we always thought, this is what I thought, uh, the time when Somalia needed food for the starving people down there. That's what it, or I seen it used in Haiti for the same thing. So I'm thinking USAID is like for charities and they only give X amount of dollars. Well, no, they don't. They don't, come to find out. Not with Hillary Clinton in charge. So now, if you guys remember, and I got to take you back to the impeachment hearing, and all you remember all the Chalupa, I believe her name was, and there was a couple others that got up there and was talking. Realize all of these um, people that were there were career diplomats, and they were Democrats, and they were all privy to what was going on down there months leading up to the Ukraine coup and everything that went down up until Donald Trump. This includes, if the rumors are correct, that whistleblower, you remember him, that single person that Adam Schiff brought forward. Well, his name is Charmela, and he is a CIA analyst. And why he is so important to this storyline and what I have to tell you is he was on the National Security Council during the Trump administration as a Ukrainian expert. He was later kicked out of the White House for leaking information and pushing the Russia collusion. He also worked directly with DNC operative Alexander Chalupa, who is tasked with working alongside Ukrainian embassy here in the U.S. And what they were to do was to dig up dirt on Donald Trump. And that this is documented. These are in documents. And they're, um, we may have seen them going against Trump during those hearings, but when you actually pull up the documents and you look at their actual statements, it basically says, yeah, they were kind of digging up some stuff on him. So um, these are witnesses that were tainted, their testimony, and they should have been thrown out. But this is only a hearing, so they got away with it. So not only that, um, if that wasn't enough, he also worked alongside Joe Biden, and he was made the point man in Ukraine. Um, but there's still more folks, and so Adam Schiff, 5 days after the first special, uh, uh, everybody needed to know about this whistleblower, and not only that. He was so important and no one could know his name, and we were going to use his statement, and it was true and factual. And so come to find out, when we wanted to know who he was, if you knew all of this stuff that he was doing for the government, and he was what did I say, a point man for Joe Biden in Ukraine. He also worked for the State Department. Um, so the department officials and the CIA NSC staffers were so scared of Donald Trump poking around in Ukraine, they were afraid of revealing who he really was. And if it has anything to do with financing some of these groups, like these foundations and the NGOs, uh, that would have been something that Trump would have definitely, well, he did put a stop to it. But I don't know how much Trump knows, but um, it sure seems like there was something um, if he didn't find out on that phone call, he had it investigated by his own people. And I think this is kind of the stuff he's turned up. So the Ukrainian prosecutors claim to have evidence that over 7 billion had been misappropriated. And this is the part of it, because it's missing. It came up missing. $7 billion. That would be kind of important, because it was our tax money. That's what got me. When you look at it, it's like, wait a minute, that came from the State Department. That would be money that we paid in on taxes. And so um, they didn't want to bring this up at the hearings, that the 7 million was disappeared. And you would thought that would have been kind of important, because did Zelensky take it? Did that DA take it? Who got it? I can't officially find out that answer. Um, but I am pretty sure that July 25th phone call, um, I really believe that we need to bring this up with this. If we charge any Senate with all of this that has happened and they are a big part of, um, I think they need to do like they did with Hillary Clinton, to get Durham on this and have him look into anybody that could have been part of that. Because remember, I told you there was a whole bunch of them over there. There was a whole bunch of Democrats that were over there quite a few times, and even MI6, and quite a few UK officials and people of importance that were all over there at the same time. And this is what didn't make sense to me. And I said, I'm missing something. What is it that all of them are over there for? It's not about this group of guys that got trained by our State Department, and now they're killing people. That didn't make sense. The Hunter Biden story did in a way, but I always thought there was something else because when all of the Hunter Biden things went away, there was still a lot of corruption that was going on. And so, getting back to this whistleblower, the heavyweights within the State Department were working on um, Ukraine, and the entire email that came from it with this whistleblower, it's all been redacted. All of it's gone. So whatever Carmela specifically said to the State Department will not be released. This document is available over there. All of these are, you can find them at Judicial Watch. They do not want you to know on basically with this email and this chain of emails that was going back and forth. It revealed the overall context that Obama administration, their dollars were going through the U.S. Embassy via U.S. aid. So they know that the embassy got it. They know that it came from U.S. aid, and it was approved by Obama. Now the thing is that one guy, Anderson Christopher, the embassy of Kiev, he coordinated with U.S. aid, and they have detailed input. So why do I started thinking about it, and I was like, this guy Anderson Christopher sounds really familiar, and I couldn't place it. And I kind of ran it through, and I really didn't get much, but then I found out I spelled it wrong, and typos. And then when it came up, I went, oh my goodness. The reason he sounded familiar is because he's the guy that testified against Donald Trump at the impeachment inquiry. And they're all connected in this coup that's going on. And Ukraine, um, um, the whole question comes up is why are all these people that were a part of that impeachment hearing and the State Department and Obama and Hillary and Soros and all these guys, why are we backing this and U.S. funding? And why are we backing Soros, even though we have been warned by many countries not to do this? I mean, it's not like uh, he's just a guy with a foundation and he's using our tax dollars and he's helping people out, so he says. No, this is somebody that's been kicked out of his own country. He was kicked out of Russia. And there's quite a few other countries he's just not allowed in because he does stuff. He's crooked. He's evil. So when I look back, the group began back in 2013. And so that's the initial timeline that I was able to find. Now, what is really weird is there was a name that came up on a few of the documents. It was signed by this guy, Alex Ross. Now, I mentioned him earlier. Now, he was appointed to the State Department as a senior advisor to Secretary Hillary Clinton. And he started popping up on a lot of documents dated all the way back to 2011. So the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine and the fact-finding mission, where he was basically, he kept ending up over there. And it was like, now we have the State Department over there. Now, what is going on over there? What is going on in Ukraine? Because, folks, we're fighting we're watching a war over there, and we're meddling right in the middle of it. And see, when I seen this was all playing out, I said, why are we back over there again? What is it that Ukraine or somebody over there doesn't want us to know about? And I kept thinking, Putin, when Hunter Biden left, and all that controversy. I think I even told Mary. I know I told quite a few. I said I think Putin got a hold of some documents, and he's got them, and he's holding it over their heads. No, I was wrong. The documents are actually out there. It's just no one ever paid attention to it. So um, there was um, he quoted, learning about local status of the internet, freedom, and discussing Secretary Clinton's 21st century statecraft agenda. Um, so that was a new one. You know, they keep coming up with these little groups and ideas and agendas, and they name it all. And the Clintons are really good for that. So it was the 21st century agenda. And basically, what it boils down to is that the observation that Obama administration had regard the state of the world in the to under, undergo massive changes, technology changes, and in infrastructure. Not only that, but mass media communication and change uh, that were occurring all at the same time that all of this was going on. So when I read that, I thought, oh, okay. So what they're doing over there is they are bringing them up to date with technology. And I thought, well, you know, Ukraine is very modern, and a lot of people from the United States live there. So to me, it made sense. And then we seen the State Department also knew about this. The same time Joe Biden and Hunter with Burisma, all of a sudden, Obama shows up. And so then I was like, oh boy, now what's going on? So this is basically the part of the cover up. Um, so when Ross went again and he addressed the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, this was October of 2011, he stated the force and effect of all three of these paradigm shifts are taking place at once. It creates a moment of remarkability. It also in a remarkable disruptive change for those of us that work in the foreign policy, a change of radicals, of those disruptive. And he said, I would argue it is actually the most significant, and it goes to this issue called power. So, disruptive change. Some might explain this as chaos, but ultimately, those willing to exploit it, and what is the reward? Power. That's why I say that George, it's not about the money. You know, he's got gazillions, and it's the power. And so so then my whole idea of what's going on in Ukraine turned to maybe he just wants his own country. Maybe that's all this is. Maybe Burisma with Biden's with buying into one of the major gas companies that go, you guys have seen it on the news, it goes right through the country. So I'm thinking, that's it. He wants his own country. He got kicked out of his own. It's kind of like ISIS. They wanted their own little state and to claim. No, that wasn't it, folks. That wasn't it. And see, that's why I said last night, you know, when I looked into this, I had the dots. I just had certain things that just didn't add up. So, for the most part, no matter which side of the aisle you're on, we all pretty much agree that the regime change, that stoking chaos is not really what the American people want. Now, under the Obama administration, it's all being done in the name of um, um, corruption. Um, or, you know, you can't really say that. At this point, you got to say chaos. He is ordering chaos on the streets of Kyiv. And not only that, but even Maripol, all of the big cities that you're seeing it with the war right now, and those big cities that are being bombed, that is where the chaos was sent to. And chaos meaning what they do here. They start protests, they got their sign, and then it turns violent. And Hillary's State Department, the plan actually, her plan began a few weeks after Obama was elected in November of 2008. It was an initiative that actually came from the Bush White House called um, Public Diplomacy 2.0. And its stated goal was to enable people and countries to combat violent or extreme ideology, more specifically, Islamic radicalism from Al Qaeda. So the State Department invited a bunch of tech savvy people from all over the world to show them how to network, how to launch social media campaigns, to, they say, counter radical ideology. But in a few months, you started seeing that no, this wasn't what it was about, because they were saying that the turnover, and I can't, there's certain words I can't say on this. The turnover of a president, if they take to the streets, they can overturn it as long as this is what they did. And Obama, with his new administration under Hillary, um, he was all for this. And the leftists, um, I've told you about the civil society 2.0. So don't confuse that just yet. This was something different through Obama administration. This other stuff was through the State Department with the foundations and the NGOs. So you could see there's um, two different agendas that they had, but it both did two different things. But when you look at it, like their points of what they want to do, it's the same. It's almost mirrored. So um, what what it really it was to turn leftist leftist politics into a control of Ukraine. And everybody seems to miss a lot of this, that they make these countries, they say, more free, more open, that by creating systems that give people in the State Department and the NGOs more control. They say it's freedom. We're going to help you. We're going to bring our people in. We're going to help train your military. And what they do is they end up ingesting corruption into it. And not only that, but again, Alex Ross on what civil society was doing. This is what he said in an open mic. They're actively training groups to mobilize through societies. They use Antifa, BLM, and they're paid at least three other groups to round up radical protesters and rioters through social media. Not to round them up to arrest them. No, it's to round them up around the world where they're at, to push them into a country that they want to change the presidency on. So between Obama, Hillary, and these NGO groups, they would send them to all these countries, like they did it with Arab Spring. They did it with Libya. All of those things I told you about last night, all those different countries, they sent this group in to start a protest for it to turn rowdy. And when night falls, they just burn everything in sight. Sounds familiar, huh? So Ross went on to say, it is such program that Secretary Clinton launched in Morocco, in November of 2009 called Civil Society 2.0. And what we've done with Secretary Clinton's Civil Society 2.0 program is we've taken one of America's undeniable strengths and use of our technologies so we can give it to the innovators to put them to work in service of our diplomatic goals of what we want. And what we've done, we've created these things called tech camps. We're all over the world, very intensive training and the grassroots of civil society organizations. So what they did is all these countries, before they took them down, they brought in the internet and they brought it into the country. Why? So they could get people in that country that wanted to hit the streets, protest, riot, and burn things down, and they would pay them for it. Now, I've told you this happens here. Remember, there's so many times what I said, Minneapolis and Portland and Seattle, Berkeley, LA. I'm starting to see the same people. And I thought I was just dreaming, or, no, they just kind of sort of look alike, until I compared pictures. And I was like, oh my God, they're being sent around the country. So this is something that was put in. And their training ground, not only for the tech, but it's training ground for foot soldiers. What's been known as indigenous. They're not indigenous. No, these are just a bunch of thugs, and they're being traded by spontaneous, not spontaneous. We'll let them loose and tell them basically why and here and when and so basically the Azov Battalion, if they go to uprisings and if they're part of the society or the open society NGOs, they can guarantee that the U.S. Constitution will protect them. And plus, not only that, with Hillary Clinton. And what it does is it says they're not a real, there's no leader of the group, and BLM is. And I think that's why they tucked away on this and walked. Because you can't have a leader. Because what it does is then it allows them not to be responsible. This is part of the 2.0. They can go and riot, they can burn things down, and they hurt people, hurt the police, and even protest against the police. And they're not going to get in trouble for it. And see, this is what's going on in other countries, folks. So this has all been going on over the years for decades, but no one ever really paid attention to it. And, that's why I believe when we looked at the 60s with the civil rights movement, there was Black Panthers. A lot of them were put in jail, but they were immediately released when they were the ones doing it. Well, they wanted the head guy. They could care less what these rioters were doing that were back in the Black Panthers with Fallon and a few others, that since they didn't have, this one had the leader, so they didn't care about all these protester rioters and what they did. They walked away. They wanted the big guy. So then we've seen Hillary, and this is odd because Hillary isn't a Green New Deal person. She's kind of always been about money and corruption. And she said, they want to put a price on carbon pollution and using the money to fund clean energy and to send dividends back to the working families to lower emission and raise incomes at the same time. Not to mention weaken petro dictators like Putin, taxing net worth instead of annual income that would reduce the inequality and provide the sources needed to make major new investment in infrastructure, education, and health. We should explore how to make universal basic income work in that way. And it preserves dignity and the sense of purpose. And we need to reform the corporate governances and break up the monopolies and the oligopolies. I think that's what she said. Um, my whole thing was in that was, well, yeah, you want to do away with fossil fuels. She was the one that basically backed the XL pipeline. I don't know if you guys knew that. She backed it up until she was running for office. And then she was like, oh, no, no, we can't have it. We can't have it. It's only used when it's convenient. Now, what she said, that almost sounded like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. But no, it was Hillary Clinton. And I thought she was a moderate one. But carbon taxes, a wealth tax, basic income, universal basic income. So breaking up companies and banks, that's something that she has been doing. And I thought only the far left and the Democrat Party wanted to do all this. But the Clintons are mascots for the establishment. So what's that mean? When they say, oh, I got to go find somebody in mainstream and find somebody who will jump in and say things they want them to say, when they're running but actually believe it all. And these far left policies is now part of the establishment of the Democrat Party. Yes, yes. And I know this is many people have believed in what Hillary Clinton has promoted with the Green New Deal and the rest of them. The Democrats have, we haven't. Uh, so if you are one of their supporters, I think they're getting their masks taken off on this. And the bigger point is more like civil societies, like an open society, is spreading democracy, they claim, throughout the world. And the left is socialist ideology. And so when they have their speeches, pay attention. I know you don't like listening to them, but sometimes if you hear a chunk of it, you'd be really surprised what they're pushing. And this is, to me, Bernie Sanders school, what she was quoting, because it was when I've listened to Hillary a lot, and when she was saying this, I was like, that's not Hillary. That's someone's speech that maybe it was a speech that was supposed to go to Bernie Sanders, and she got it instead. So the State Department, I want to keep going on this because I got a lot. They with everything you're seeing right now, folks, they did all this behind our backs, and they're making policy changes. They're making laws that it's going to end up hurting us. And now we're starting to see it, like the judges and the prosecuting attorneys and police officers gone rogue. And not only that, but including trying to take a president down. They tried to flip it, like they were trying to do in Ukraine. Well, which they did in Ukraine, but not only that, but look at what they were trying to do here. Convince everybody and scare people into voting their way, not the GOP. Now, Civil Society 2.0, Alex Ross and his tech camps, basically teaching to mobilize and carry their not only their online presence, but bring these people to the streets. Now, there is they had this gentleman that right after they had put this in place and there was rioting in the streets of Ukraine, there was this guy that came forward, and he was from basically the ambassador, but it was at their own State Department, and he was getting very upset, and he spoke Russian. So I had to translate what he said because it was all in Russian. Because sometimes you go to YouTube and they're speaking Russian and it's like, oh, I have no clue. So you have to kind of put it through a translator so you can understand. So this particular guy, he's pro Russian, and he was being shouted down because he's a very pro Putin and Russia. And why? Because he lives in one of them states that Russia's going after. He wants to be Russian. He likes Russia, but now he's a part of Ukraine, and so he was able to speak out at one of their hearings, and uh, so he wanted to um, make a point of telling everyone that they're out on the streets because you can hear it. They're chanting and they're yelling and they're screaming while he's trying to speak, and it's almost like they're beating down the doors to get in to get to this guy. And he said they are. It's the United States. It's their State Department. They are training these people to kill. They are training an army. We got to stop this. And so he's speaking to the basically the politicians and those that formed the laws. And he was saying they're killers. And not only that, but they're training them to be like that. And it's coming from the United States State Department. So, when I seen that and I heard that, I was like, whoa, yeah, that's kind of big because that really backs it up that this was happening. And on the streets, this was actually happening. And they were trying to overthrow the government. And that kind of explains why they were over there to begin with. So, um, so these now get this, what he finished up with. They're trying to start a revolution. They're trying to start a war, and they didn't understand that because the separatists were just tit for tat back and forth. And no, they were in there for to start a war. And when get this, they started. This is what I've heard. They started bringing in the military equipment first and started like they were setting up for a long haul battle. And all of a sudden, you had all these Democrats show up, and they're basically looking into what they can get their hands on, like the biolabs, like the gas, and the pipelines that go through the country. So that's what they're looking at. Um, and so then we end up with Alex Ross again, saying that basically when he came to the department down there, it was kind of leaderless, and they needed a revolution, or even setting up virtual organizations that they could start a war with Russia. And as we seen, it did happen in 2015. So um, so what we seen was in 2013 there was a lot going on. Not only was uh, Hunter Bush starting Burisma, then you had all this chaos that was going on, and they were if you guys remember the news reports, they were all out on the streets and they were protesting. But then at night you start seeing the Molotov cocktails and you start seeing the destruction. So basically they were all moving in and watching the country fall. And what they did is they noticed these cities were falling, and what they could get from these cities is putting people into power, putting a socialist Ukrainian as a mayor or as a prosecutor. And this is what they started doing. They started filling these positions up while they were at their lowest. Now, what they've done over here, because it's almost getting to be the same way, they had been working over the years to put people in power. And I think they perfected it with Ukraine. And they have put, with Soros, and the NGOs are paying prosecutors and mayors and judges and governors, anybody that can be in office, they're giving money to. So so this, I thought, okay, so what's the big deal? Except for it's not good that they're doing this. And so I'm starting to think that, Obama, Hillary, and that this is the work of what I call a madman for the, Western world. Why? Why Ukraine? And, and I got to thinking about it, and I said, yeah, they did that to Syria too. They did it to Syria, they did it to Iraq. Look at Afghanistan. We were over there, and it's just gutted. Um, so this is how what they do to establish a government over there, and this is what they were doing. So my whole theory was falling back on Mr. George wants his own country. No, that's not it. There's still more. Um, you're going. It's like Hillary. You say what? There's still more that they were doing. Yeah. Um, so now we have a lot of whistleblowers coming out of Ukraine that were in these offices saying, yeah, they were over here and we don't like what they were doing, what they stand for, and they're resigning. Well, they're resigning, but they're disappearing. Um, and not only that, when they started leaving and resigning, um, Trump had already cut off all the funding to Ukraine. So, what we're looking at is now they're putting their own people in. Trump has cut the funding, and they're saying, whoa, wait a minute now. Now we don't have all this money come from the State Department. And that's when uh, Soros went to the UN, and, the United States isn't being fair. And so they went ahead and approved it, and then had it approved by Obama, just like I just told you. So it's so basically, uh, the impeachment of Trump, it did bring out a lot. It told us that there is a huge socialist party in Ukraine to start. Not only that, but now we know that there's a lot more to what's going on in Ukraine, because we started seeing the same things happening again in Syria. Now, Turkey doesn't like it, and um, Assad, believe it's Assad. He was rejecting them being in the country, and he said, and get this, what's really weird is even Russia and China was rejecting this idea in Syria, because they said no, it's a neo-Nazi thing of the West. And not only it wasn't, and get this, even the Arabs said the same thing. They said this is a neo-Nazi regime from the West. How many times have we heard this? Stopped? What stopped? Did I stop? I hope, Mary, am I still going? Let me know. So, um, so then get this. Then we start seeing the protests in Paris. And I went, oh no, I know what they're doing. And everybody thought it was this um, the pandemic. Everybody thought it was the pandemic that they were all protesting against. Well, get this. You remember where I told you that the media signed on with the CIA and the journalists, and they were to back a sitting president? That's what they were doing. So everything we were getting from the media, and this is what Eve and others of my sources over there telling me, is what we're hearing is only what our media wants us to know. So they could be saying death to America, and they would, well, I don't know, can I get in trouble for saying that? But what the media would say is, Oh, they want America over here. We want them to come over and help us out and figure out our new Green Deal. Wink, wink. Uh, yeah. So it's all of they could do a lot of proxy wars like this if they can get in there, and then we just sit back. And like I told you last night, if a war does happen, we send in Blackwater and we send in the contractors. We just give them all the equipment that they want. And again, this is where I'm so angry. And we did it in Iraq. Now, what is the payment for this? To send in these protesters or these um, uh, vicious um, protesters, these groups? Well, we let them have the equipment in payment. Huh. And we did it in Iraq, we did it in Afghanistan. So basically, the Taliban, we paid them for services of upsetting the Middle East, and they got the military equipment for payment. This is what's coming out in the documents, and I was thank God for Tom Fenton, because he's the one that brought it up. So I went and I read the documents, and I was like, whoa, yeah, now it is true. We did leave the equipment in Iraq. And it's broken. None of it's working. They can't do nothing with it. Isn't that what we heard in Afghanistan? You know what's really sad is when we pulled out a lot in Syria, we said the same thing. In Haiti, Haiti, we moved in all kinds of protesters there. And remember the houses that were supposed to be built and it never happened? Yeah, that was part of the protesting. They were supposed to go over and build these houses. So a whole slew of them went over there. And not only are they getting the people to uprise a little bit and, hey, you don't want to live here? America's really great. You know? Um, And this is so disheartening because now they're taking on the role of telling illegals to come to our country. Why? We don't know. I have investigated this so hard to find out what the terrorists are doing in our country. My opinion is looking at the documents, they're pulling together their own army. And why? Because NATO is not going to do it. Uh, the UN isn't going to enforce anybody to come over and take us all out. And mind you, Democrats, you're on the hit list too. You're not above anything. It don't matter. They don't care about you. This is what's so sad. They don't even care about their own voters, that they're going to mow them down and kill them. Um, I'm getting too far. Um, so basically, this is basically when you start looking at the deep state, who the deep state are. And I'm going to wrap this up because um, uh, tomorrow I'll be getting into the deep state players and what they actually wanted from Ukraine. It wasn't the war. It turns out it wasn't Soros wanting to have the power. No, it was about owning for the United States to have a huge part of Ukraine and the resources. They always go after the resources, folks. All of them. Hillary Clinton and the NGOs and Soros and all of them. They all go after the resources. And what I mean is that Ukraine's got gas, and they can also put a pipeline through uh, with Russia eventually, or maybe that eastern part of Ukraine, they're looking at wanting to drill. So they really do need those those different states or countries in Ukraine, like Mariupol, the steel factory. Oh, they need that. They need that and other resources that they could pull out of the ground, off the land, uh, that they can make money in the stock market on. So not only are they doing that, they are, uh, according to Putin early on, and this was 2015, he was griping that the United States had moved in and was refurbishing old biolabs. And so when he basically had went to war, that was one thing that irritated him really bad because he accuses the United States all the time about leaks in their labs. And so that's something that he's been blowing up. So this is what we're looking at is what do they want with Ukraine? They're going to tear it down and to where the people are going to leave and then they can move in and they could start taking over with the resources. Um, so let's see if there's anything else. The other thing that someone that inserted themselves in, and it was really odd, was John McCain. He went to Syria and he met with a group. And this is something that it starts tying ISIS into what's going on in these countries. And John McCain went over and he had spoke to ISIS before the big, huge battle in Syria. So now we're looking at, wow. So not only have we been using them like these protesters, but they're that battalion, like the Azov battalion. Well, there is your battalion for the Middle East. Well, what do they have over in South America? Well, MS-13, folks. And get this, we have been sending gang members um, down to for not only the cartel, but MS-13 to train them military-wise, and then they're all going back up. So then when they want more to come over the border and then move into like Chicago, they say, oh, I've got my brother's there. My brother, yeah. My brother and his kid. Um, so this is what they've been doing. They have been, like McCain, talking to ISIS, and then we find out that ISIS is basically one of our um, groups that they call them simple protesters. And so, and there's nobody, if you call them simple protesters, then they can get away with this as indigenous, especially if they're from another country. So this is what they've been doing. But it still didn't make sense to me on why we want Ukraine so bad. So I'm real itchy. Okay, so there's more. There's more. That's why I'm going to make this a whole week worth because you guys really need to learn all this. So we have ISIS, we have MS-13. Our gang members are trained by probably ISIS and MS-13 and the cartel, and so is all these other countries. And slowly they have been going country to country to country, is what we learned today. Yesterday it was socialism. Today it's their army and how they established it and who they're using. And these are terrorists. Are they on the list? No, they probably have school parents that are standing up to the schools on CRT. They're the terrorists. Proud Boys, yeah, they're terrorists. No, I don't think so. I think everybody needs to look at the other side. Um, the Proud Boys do bad things, yeah, and if they do them, they're going to get caught and they're going to be punished. But for the most part, they're there for every Veterans Day parades around the country to make sure Antifa doesn't attack them. And so we have Antifa attacking military members big time. So, with that, I want to thank everyone for watching today. tomorrow, there's more. Tomorrow is going to be another Ukraine Day. And we're going to start seeing the people that have invested. It's not just Hillary and Obama, and it's not just the State Department. We start seeing we follow the money trail, because if where's that $8 billion or 7 million or 8 million, where's that money at? Because that's our tax money that somebody took. So tomorrow we're going to take a look at that. So come on back tomorrow. We'll do a little bit of news. I will be back on in the morning, as long as my allergies don't kill me off. So yeah, please like and share and subscribe to this. I'm laying this out very slow, folks, so you guys can really understand what's going on. And you might have to listen to it more than once. So, as Mary said, God bless everyone here, and our blessings to you. I know we're blessed, and I'm gonna have a good time giving you guys all this info, because we need to know this in order to move forward with our country and who we see our new president will be, because we can't have them overturning and bringing in a dictatorship. They want a one-party system. We want a two-party to make it fair. So this is we have to really re-examine how we want our country. So we will see everyone tomorrow morning. And thanks for watching. Subscribe, hit the bell. A lot of people are having issues with getting notified. So keep hitting the bell, and maybe YouTube will get it to where they notify you that I'm on. So with that, we will see everyone tomorrow, and have a wonderful day. Enjoy that sunshine, unless you're up in the thunderstorms. And if so, be very, very safe. So we'll see you tomorrow, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, folks.